Have you ever looked around and wondered why the people you thought would always be there slowly disappeared? Why conversations became fewer, invitations stopped coming, and silence started surrounding your life? Let me say this gently but clearly. Sometimes loneliness is not rejection. Sometimes it is divine selection. Not everyone who walks away is meant to stay, and not every season of isolation is a punishment. Some are preparation. There is a moment in life when Allah removes noise so you can finally hear truth. When He separates you, not because you are weak, but because what He is building in you is rare. And rare things are not shaped in crowds. They are refined in quiet places, where intentions are tested and hearts are purified. Before we go deeper, if this message is already speaking to something inside you, take a second and subscribe. These reminders are meant to walk with you through moments just like this, and you don't have to navigate them alone. One reason Allah isolates the chosen is protection. Not every environment is safe for your faith. Some rooms drain you slowly, not loudly. You don't notice it at first, but your prayer weakens, your values soften, your boundaries blur. So Allah removes you, not to hurt you, but to guard what He planted in you. Protection often looks like loss before it looks like peace. Another reason is sincerity. When no one is watching, when applause disappears, when it's just you and Allah, your intentions become clear. You learn how to worship without validation, how to pray without being seen, how to obey without being praised. That quiet sincerity becomes strength no one can take from you. Isolation also breaks unhealthy dependence. Sometimes we rely on people for reassurance that should come from Allah. We look for belonging in places that were never meant to define us. So Allah pulls those supports away, not to abandon you, but to anchor you correctly. What feels like emptiness is often realignment. There are seasons when Allah wants you to remember who you are without everyone's opinions shaping you. In isolation, your identity becomes clearer. You stop performing, you stop explaining, you start becoming. Purpose gets louder when distractions fade. Another reason is discernment. When life slows down, your spiritual senses sharpen. You begin to recognize what drains you, what uplifts you, what is sincere and what is performative. This clarity is a gift, but it only grows in stillness. Isolation is also healing. Some wounds cannot heal while they are constantly being triggered. Allah gives you space to breathe, to process, to forgive, to rebuild. Healing is quiet work. It doesn't happen on a stage. And finally, Allah isolates the chosen to prepare them for responsibility. Not fame, not popularity. Responsibility. What He plans to entrust to you requires depth, discipline, and emotional maturity. That kind of strength is formed away from crowds. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below. Does this season feel like isolation or preparation? Your words might help someone else realize they're not alone. And if you know someone who's been feeling confused by their loneliness, share this with them. Sometimes one reminder can change how a whole season feels. Remember this: Allah does not isolate you to shrink you. He isolates you to shape you. And when the time is right, you won't re-enter life the same. You'll return with clarity, strength, and a heart deeply anchored in Him. Have you ever noticed how some relationships slowly pull you away from who you're trying to become? Not with drama, not with obvious harm, but quietly. Little comments here, small compromises there, missed prayers, delayed intentions. And one day you wake up feeling distant from Allah without knowing exactly when it happened. That's when protection begins. Because sometimes Allah doesn't warn you with noise. He protects you with distance. If this already feels personal, take a moment and subscribe. These reminders are for hearts navigating seasons like this. And staying connected might be exactly what you need right now. One of the first reasons Allah isolates the chosen is protection of faith. Not punishment, not rejection, protection. There are environments that look harmless but slowly erode your spiritual strength. People who don't push you away from Allah directly, but they distract you just enough to weaken your connection. You still believe. You still care. But your heart feels heavier, your discipline softer, your awareness dimmer. Allah sees this long before you do, so He intervenes, not always by changing them, but by moving you. He removes you from spaces where your values would eventually be negotiated instead of honored. And at first it hurts. You question yourself. You wonder if you're being too sensitive, too serious, too different. But what you're really being is protected. There's a story so many people carry quietly. You tried to stay. You tried to fit your faith into places it didn't belong. You tried to be strong enough to resist influence. But Allah knows the heart gets tired. Even strong believers need safe ground. So He creates separation, not because you failed, but because he refused to let you fall slowly. Protection doesn't always feel gentle. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like being misunderstood. Sometimes it feels like standing alone while others move on together. But what if that space was mercy? What if Allah was preserving something in you that would have been damaged if you stayed? In isolation, your faith breathes again. Your prayers become honest. Your choices become clearer. You stop apologizing for your values. You stop explaining why obedience matters to you. And without realizing it, your heart starts healing from compromises you didn't even know you were making. This is especially hard in a culture that celebrates constant connection. Being alone feels like failure, but spiritually, separation can be elevation. Allah knows which rooms would cost you your light. So He closes doors before the loss becomes permanent. If this speaks to something you've lived, comment below with one word: protected. Your voice might help someone else reframe their pain. And if you know someone struggling with unexpected distance, share this with them. They might be blaming themselves for something Allah is actually using to guard them. Remember, Allah does not isolate you because you are weak. He isolates you because what's inside you is valuable. And valuable things are protected, even when the protection feels uncomfortable at first. Have you ever noticed how crowded life can get, yet your heart still feels unheard? Surrounded by people, messages, opinions, yet something inside you feels distant, unsettled, unfinished. That feeling is not emptiness, it's an invitation. Because one of the most powerful reasons Allah isolates the chosen is to deepen sincerity, the kind of faith that exists even when no one is watching. If this feels like it's touching something personal, pause for a second and subscribe. These messages are for hearts walking through quiet seasons, and staying connected can make that silence feel less heavy. Public faith is easy. Private faith is honest. When people are around, intentions can blur without us even realizing it. We pray, but part of us hopes to be noticed. We give, but we wonder who will appreciate it. We speak about Allah, but a piece of us wants approval. None of this makes you fake, it makes you human. And Allah, in His mercy, sometimes removes the audience so your heart can become real again. Isolation strips faith down to its core. No validation, no applause. No one reminding you to stay consistent. Just you and Allah. And in that space, something beautiful happens. You begin to ask yourself why you worship. Not who sees it, not what it looks like, but why you're doing it at all. There's a quiet shift that happens when sincerity deepens. Your prayers become simpler but heavier with meaning. You stop rushing through them. You start speaking to Allah honestly, about fear, confusion, weakness, hope. You cry when no one hears. You ask questions you were afraid to ask out loud. And Allah listens closely in those moments. This kind of sincerity cannot be developed in noise. It requires space, stillness, time. That's why Allah sometimes removes distractions, relationships, routines, even good things for a season. Not to deprive you, but to refine you. To make sure your faith is rooted in love, not habit. In truth, not performance. For many people, this season feels uncomfortable because there's nothing to hide behind. No one to impress, no one to lean on spiritually. And that can feel scary. But it's also where strength is built. When faith becomes private, it becomes unshakable. In a world that constantly shares, posts, and performs, private worship feels invisible. But Allah values what is hidden. The prayer no one saw, the tear no one noticed, the choice you made only for Him. These moments shape a heart that is steady, sincere, and deeply connected. If this resonates with you, comment below and say, sincere. Someone else may be realizing they're not losing people. They're gaining depth. And if you know someone who feels spiritually lost in the quiet, share this with them. They might be closer to Allah than they think. Remember, Allah isolates you not to weaken your faith, but to purify it. And when sincerity is established in private, strength shows up everywhere else. Have you ever felt that uncomfortable moment when you reach for someone, and they're no longer there the way they used to be? Not angry, not cruel, just distant. And suddenly you realize how much of your emotional weight was resting on people instead of Allah. That realization is painful. But it's also powerful, because one of the reasons Allah isolates the chosen is to break unhealthy emotional dependence. If this is already hitting close to home, take a moment and subscribe. These messages are here to help you make sense of seasons that feel confusing, but are deeply intentional. We don't usually notice emotional dependence while it's happening. It feels normal. You share everything. You seek reassurance. You feel safe when certain people approve of you and anxious when they don't. Their presence stabilizes you, their absence shakes you. And slowly, without meaning to, they become your emotional anchor. Allah sees this not to judge you, but to protect your heart. There's a quiet danger in relying on people to carry weight they were never designed to hold. People get tired, they change, they leave, they disappoint, not always because they want to, but because they're human. When your peace is tied to them, your stability becomes fragile, so Allah intervenes, not by making them bad, but by making them unavailable. At first the separation feels harsh, you replay conversations, you wonder what you did wrong, you question your worth. But what if the distance wasn't about loss? What if it was about transfer? Moving your emotional dependence from creation back to the creator. In isolation, you're forced to sit with feelings you used to hand off to others. Fear, loneliness, insecurity, uncertainty. And instead of texting someone, you talk to Allah. Instead of waiting for reassurance, you seek it in prayer. Slowly something shifts. You realize you can survive discomfort. You can self-regulate. You can stand without leaning so heavily on anyone else. This doesn't mean Allah wants you alone forever. It means He wants you whole. Relationships are meant to complement you, not complete you. When Allah becomes your primary source of safety, people stop having power over your peace. You love them without fear. You lose them without collapse. For many, this season is the hardest because it exposes attachment wounds. It reveals how much validation meant to you, how deeply approval controlled your emotions. But healing begins with awareness, and Allah creates awareness through space. In a culture that encourages emotional oversharing and constant connection, learning to be emotionally anchored in Allah feels countercultural. But it's freeing. When people are no longer the source of your stability, their opinions lose their grip. Their absence no longer defines you. If this resonates, comment below with the word anchored. Your honesty may help someone else understand why this season feels so heavy. And if you know someone struggling with letting go emotionally, share this with them. It might be the reminder they need to stop blaming themselves and start trusting Allah. Remember, Allah doesn't remove people to leave you empty. He removes them to teach you how to stand full, steady, and emotionally rooted in Him. Have you ever felt like the world expects you to be a certain way, to fit in, to perform, to meet everyone's standards, and somewhere along the way, you lost sight of who you really are? That confusion, that pressure, that quiet anxiety, it's not random. One of the profound reasons Allah isolates the chosen is to realign their identity with divine purpose. Sometimes, He needs you alone to remind you of who you are before the world tells you who to be. If this already feels personal, take a moment to subscribe. These messages are here to walk with hearts that feel lost in the noise, and staying connected can help you see clearly again. When you spend too much time around people who don't understand your calling, or in environments that demand compromise, your identity starts shifting without you noticing. You begin to measure yourself by standards that aren't yours. Your dreams get tangled with other people's expectations. Your choices begin to echo someone else's approval instead of your own conviction. This is why isolation is not punishment, it's recalibration. Being isolated gives you the space to breathe and to rediscover your true self. Away from the crowd, you start asking the right questions. Who am I beyond what people see? What do I believe when no one is listening? What does Allah want me to be, regardless of whether anyone applauds or understands? These questions are essential, because purpose cannot thrive when identity is scattered. There's a story many people carry quietly. They've tried to fit into spaces that weren't meant for them, only to feel exhausted, frustrated, and disconnected. Allah sees this. He knows your heart is being stretched in directions that are not yours, so He removes the pressure, pulls the audience away, and creates a sanctuary of stillness. In this space, your identity begins to solidify, rooted in Him rather than opinions, popularity, or temporary trends. The world will always have noise, always have expectations, always have comparisons. But your purpose is meant to rise above that. Isolation allows clarity. You start to notice your strengths, recognize your weaknesses, and understand what truly matters to you. Your decisions become intentional, not performative. Your voice becomes authentic, not rehearsed. It's hard in the moment because human hearts crave approval. We don't like being unseen. We fear being misunderstood. But what feels like emptiness is actually preparation. Your identity is being anchored in the right place before responsibility, influence, and success come knocking. If this resonates, comment below with the word aligned. Your words could help someone realize that this season of solitude is shaping their divine path. And if you know someone who is struggling to find themselves amidst life's expectations, share this with them. Sometimes one reminder is enough to shift perspective and ignite hope. Remember, Allah doesn't isolate you to make you smaller. He isolates you to help you stand taller in your true purpose. And when that clarity settles in, no one's opinion will ever define you again. Have you ever felt like your heart notices things no one else does? A quiet sense that some people, situations, or opportunities aren't what they seem. That inner voice, sometimes ignored, sometimes dismissed, is actually your spiritual perception sharpening. One of the reasons Allah isolates the chosen is to awaken discernment, to give you eyes that see beyond appearances, ears that hear beyond noise, and a heart that recognizes truth even when the world is loud and misleading. If this is already resonating, take a moment to subscribe. These messages are meant for hearts learning to see clearly, and staying connected will help you recognize what Allah is teaching you in this season. When you are constantly surrounded by people, environments, and endless opinions, your perception gets clouded. Choices are harder, signs are missed, warnings are ignored. Praise can feel like flattery, and criticism can feel personal. You start making decisions based on what seems right in the moment, rather than what is truly right in Allah's sight. This is why isolation is necessary. It sharpens your spiritual senses. In the quiet away from the crowd, your heart begins to notice subtleties, the whispers of intuition, the signs that were hidden in plain sight, the truth behind every encounter. All become clearer. You start distinguishing between support and manipulation, encouragement and distraction, wisdom and empty advice. It's like Allah is handing you a spiritual compass, and suddenly your steps become sure. At first, this process feels uncomfortable. People you trusted may no longer feel familiar. Situations that seemed harmless may now appear dangerous. You question yourself, am I overthinking? Am I being too cautious? But what feels like uncertainty is actually clarity forming. Allah has training your discernment so that you will not be misled when responsibilities, opportunities, and influence come your way. Discernment is a gift, but it is only cultivated in solitude. The crowd cannot teach you this. Validation cannot teach you this. Only stillness, reflection, and deliberate observation sharpen perception. You begin to notice patterns, understand motivations, and recognize subtle guidance that was always there but unnoticed. Your judgment becomes wiser. Your decisions become safer. Your faith becomes stronger. If this speaks to your journey, comment below with the word "where." Your insight may remind someone else that their current isolation is a season of sharpening, not rejection. And if you know someone who feels lost amidst noise, share this with them. Sometimes, a single perspective shift can help someone realize why they are being guided away from certain distractions. Remember, Allah doesn't isolate you to confuse you. He isolates you to help you see, to prepare your heart and mind to navigate life with clarity, wisdom, and unshakable discernment. When the right moment comes, you won't just step forward. You'll step forward with insight no one else has. Have you ever felt like life keeps bringing up the same pain, the same memories, the same disappointments over and over again? No matter how hard you try, the wounds seem to reopen every time you step into certain spaces or around certain people. That is not random. One of the reasons Allah isolates the chosen is to give space for healing. Healing that cannot happen when the world keeps stirring the hurt. If this is speaking to you, take a moment to subscribe. These messages are for hearts in seasons that feel heavy, and staying connected will remind you that you're not walking alone through this quiet work of restoration. Healing often requires distance. Some wounds are too tender to be exposed constantly to noise, opinion, or expectation. Sometimes, being around certain people or situations, even loved ones, keeps old pain alive whether they mean to or not. Allah, in His wisdom, removes you from those spaces not as punishment, but as a protective measure. He wants your heart to breathe, to rest, and to heal fully before it steps back into life. At first, isolation can feel like loneliness. You may wonder why the same struggles keep surfacing, why relationships fade, why you feel misunderstood. But the truth is that Allah is giving you space to process, to reflect, and to mend what has been broken. In that quiet, your heart begins to let go of the lingering bitterness, fear, and insecurity that you didn't even realize you were carrying. Healing in solitude is transformative. You start learning how to comfort yourself, how to speak kindly to your own heart, how to release what doesn't belong to you. You discover that your worth is not tied to the approval of others or the circumstances you've endured. You begin to recognize patterns that once trapped you and gain the wisdom to make different choices moving forward. It's not always easy. Emotional healing takes patience, self-compassion, and trust in Allah's timing. But isolation provides the sacred space to rebuild. The pain doesn't vanish overnight, but the heart grows stronger, more resilient, and more aligned with what Allah intends for you. If this resonates with you, comment below with the word healed. Your acknowledgement might help someone else understand that their current season is actually restorative, not punitive. And if you know someone who is feeling weighed down by past wounds, share this message with them. Sometimes a gentle reminder can show them that distance isn't abandonment, it's divine care. Remember, Allah does not isolate you to leave you broken. He isolates you to allow your heart to recover, to remove what hinders growth, and to prepare you for the fullness of life He has in store. When healing is complete, you will return stronger, wiser, and more whole than ever before. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to carry enormous responsibilities with ease, while others crumble under even small demands? Have you ever wondered why certain individuals are quietly prepared for great things, often in complete solitude, while the world is none the wiser? One of the reasons Allah isolates the chosen is to prepare them for responsibility, not popularity. He shapes leaders, visionaries, and servants of His purpose in quiet spaces, away from applause, distraction, and unnecessary influence. If this feels personal, pause for a second and subscribe. These messages are for hearts learning that preparation often happens in private, and staying connected can help you recognize your own season of refinement. Responsibility demands depth. It requires wisdom, patience, discernment, and a heart anchored in Allah. It cannot be developed in crowds, where validation and distraction pull you in different directions. If you are constantly surrounded by noise, you may perform, but you cannot grow. If you are constantly in the spotlight, your humility may be tested before it's ready. That's why Allah sometimes steps in and creates space. Isolation is not rejection, it's training. At first, this season may feel lonely. You might wonder why doors have closed, why people drifted away, or why life seems slower than expected. But what you are experiencing is deliberate shaping. In solitude, your focus sharpens. You begin to understand priorities that once seemed irrelevant. You notice the gaps in your knowledge, patience, and emotional strength. You confront weaknesses you might have ignored in a crowd. Preparation often involves discomfort. The heart must be tested. The mind must be disciplined. The spirit must learn reliance on Allah above all else. When popularity or attention comes too soon, it can inflate ego, misdirect energy, or distort purpose. That's why quiet seasons are necessary. They protect, refine, and strengthen the chosen so that when responsibility comes, they carry it with integrity and grace. Imagine a leader or a servant of purpose stepping into their calling fully ready, calm under pressure, discerning in decision making, unwavering in faith. That level of readiness rarely comes in public acclaim, it comes in private preparation. Every challenge faced alone, every trial endured in silence, every moment of self-discipline adds layers of capacity that will sustain them when the responsibility grows. If this resonates, comment below with the word ready. Your acknowledgement may remind someone else that their current solitude is shaping them for the very future they are anxious to step into. And if you know someone struggling to see purpose in their quiet season, share this message with them. They might need to hear that isolation is not failure, it is preparation. Remember, Allah does not isolate you to diminish your influence. He isolates you to prepare you for it. When the time is right, you won't just take responsibility. You will rise with clarity, wisdom, and strength that only private preparation can.
Hii ni An-Nisaa TV.